The glove did not belong in a ballroom. It sat alone in a glass case on a thin black pedestal, no bigger than a child's hand. The red plastic was blistered and warped from heat. The fingers curled in toward the palm. A lightning bolt logo on the back had burned into a dark brown smear. Light from the chandeliers bounced off the glass. Guests in suits and dresses moved past, drinks in hand. A string quartet played near the wall. Now and then somebody slowed and pointed. What is that? Some kind of art piece? Looks like it survived something. No sign explained it. Near the edge of the stage, under a banner that read, Hawthorne Dynamics, Annual Gala. Claire Hawthorne watched the case. Her dress was slate-colored, her hair pulled back, her makeup neat. People approached, hovered, drifted away again when they realized her eyes were not on them. From where she stood, she could see every melted ridge of the glove, the singed stitching along the wrist, the way the fingers seemed to be still reaching. Her hand tightened once around the stem of her glass. Interesting centerpiece, a man in a tuxedo said as he stopped beside her. Very dramatic. Claire did not look at him. It is not decoration, she said. He waited for more. She gave him nothing. After a moment, he cleared his throat and moved back into the crowd. Music rose. Flashbulbs popped. The ruined little glove sat still and bright under glass. Hours earlier, it had been riding on a shoulder. On the 12th floor of the Hawthorne Tower, the lights were flat and white. The hallway was empty, its tile floor still damp from a mop. Outside the window, Chicago was a blur of cold streetlights and February air. Lucas Grant pushed a cleaning cart along the hall. One of the cart's small wheels squeaked every few seconds. His badge clipped to his work shirt bounced against his chest. Keys at his belt tapped his thigh. The canvas bag on his shoulder pulled on the muscles in his neck. He passed glass-walled offices lined up like display cases. Desks with monitors asleep, chairs tucked in, a jacket left on the back of a chair, a coffee mug turned on its side on a stack of papers. At the end of the hall, above a pair of double doors, an exit sign glowed unevenly. Half the word was a strong red. The other half was weak, as if someone had scraped color away. Lucas parked the cart and pulled a small folding ladder from its side. The metal creaked when he stepped up. Up close, the casing around the sign was warm under his fingers. He popped the plastic cover free. Inside, one of the thumb-sized bulbs flickered. He twisted it out, slid a new one from a cardboard box, and pressed it in. The new bulb seated with a soft click. The word exit lit up evenly, a clear red above the doors. That is better, Lucas said. His voice sounded too loud in the empty corridor. A black camera dome in the ceiling turned with a low motor whine. In the security room, 3 floors below, his figure moved across a monitor wrapped in a green rectangle and labeled in small white type. Support staff. He climbed down, folded the ladder, and hooked it back on the cart. The bag on his shoulder bumped his side. Something inside shifted a stiff shape against the thin canvas. His hand brushed it and felt curled fingers small and unforgiving. He let the bag fall a little lower on his back and pushed on. He cut through a heavy gray door into the service corridor. Here the air was cooler. The floor was rough concrete. Cinderblock walls ran close on either side. Somewhere below, machines hummed steady and hidden. Lucas stopped beside a column and leaned the cart against the wall. He took his phone from his pocket. The screen lit his face. The time read 11:39 p.m. The lock screen photo was a boy with a gap between his front teeth and hair that refused to lie flat. Someone had drawn a red cape on the picture in marker. Lucas smiled before he even tapped the name. The call rang twice. Dad. The voice on the other end was soft and scratchy. It still filled the corridor. Hey, Jonah, Lucas said. You are supposed to be asleep. Grandma said 5 minutes. Rustle of blankets. Are you at the tall building? Lucas glanced at the numbered sign on the wall. Yeah, he said, still working on it. How many floors tonight? 22 on my list, Lucas said. I have done some already. That is taller than our whole street, Jonah said. If you clean them all, you win. Lucas looked down at his boots. The toes were scuffed. The leather was cracked near the seams. What do I win? He asked. You get to come home, Jonah said. Lucas felt his throat tighten. He swallowed once. Good prize, he said. How was school? Jonah told him about a spelling test, about a kid who spilled milk, about a picture he had drawn in art. Lucas listened, one shoulder to cool concrete, his eyes on the far end of the corridor where it bent out of sight. I drew you, Jonah said. In your Hawthorne shirt, you have a cape and the red glove. Lucas's fingers curled a little around the phone. Yeah, he said. You still working on that glove, huh? You said you will tell me the glove story when I am 7, Jonah said. I am almost 7. You are 6, Lucas said. 6.5. That half is doing a lot of work, Lucas said. I remember the deal. A distant television murmured on Jonah's end. Lucas pictured his son on his mother's couch, feet under a blanket. "Did you save anybody tonight?" Jonah asked. He always asked it. Lucas thought of the exit sign, of the slick patch he had mopped in front of the freight elevator, of the loose tile he had marked so someone in heels would not catch it and fall. "No burning buildings," he said. "No capes. I just fixed a few things so when people need to get out, they can. Kept a few ankles safe." "That counts," Jonah said. He sounded sure. Lucas let himself breathe out. "Yeah," he said. "It counts." There was another rustle, another yawn. "Grandma is giving me the eyebrow," Jonah whispered. "I have to go." "All right," Lucas said. "Sleep. I will be there in the morning. Try not to eat all the cereal before I get back." "You can have the soggy bits," Jonah said. Lucas laughed once. "Deal," he said. "Good night, buddy." "Night, Dad." The line clicked. The corridor filled back up with the hum of ducts and distant engines. Lucas slid the phone into his pocket and pushed himself away from the wall. He took hold of the cart handle. The wheels squeaked as they turned. His footsteps faded down the concrete hall, steady and unremarkable. On a security monitor below, a small green rectangle moved along a line of blueprints. On his shoulder inside the worn canvas, the burned red glove rode along in the dark, pressed against the side of the man who carried it. The security room was colder than the rest of the building. Screens covered one wall, each showing a thin slice of Hawthorne dynamics. A coffee cup sat near the console, a thin skin on its surface. Fans hummed. A digital clock ticked in the corner. On the center screen, Lucas appeared as a small figure pushing his cart along a gray corridor. A green frame marked his outline. Text sat under his image. ID Grant Lucas, role facilities, support threat baseline. A cursor passed over the words, then moved on. Behind the screens, a guard in a Navy uniform clicked from one camera to the next. Parking garage, loading dock, lobby, stairwell. His name tag read Hernandez. The door opened. He turned in his chair. Claire Hawthorne stepped into the room. Light from the monitors caught in her eyes. She wore a plain blouse and dark pants, hair pulled back, expression steady. "Morning," Hernandez said, grabbing for his coffee. "It is not morning yet," Claire said. She glanced at the clock. It glowed 5:07. He gave a small shrug. Claire's gaze moved to the screens. "How is Sentinel running?" she asked. "Good," he said. He sat straighter. "No red alerts. Calibration finished at 3. It is logging every bag and badge. Thermal density behavior, mostly green. A few yellow, no red." Claire nodded. On a screen near the top, the lobby sat empty turnstiles lined in a row, marble floor, spotless. "Run a test," she said. "Simulated intruder, concealed metal object, slow walk, coat over the arm," Hernandez typed. A ghost figure faded into the lobby feed, a pale outline crossing the floor. Numbers scrolled beside it. A black tower on the table hummed. A logo glowed above a line of text. Sentinel 521. The ghost reached the gate. The image froze. A red frame snapped around it. A small siren icon flashed in the corner. "Alert," the speaker said in a flat voice. "Exception profile. Confidence 93%. "Response time?" Claire asked. 4.3 seconds, Hernandez said. "Not bad." "Not enough," she said. "Target is under 3. He hesitated. "People still have to react." "People hesitate," Claire said. "Sentinel does not." Her tone held no anger, only pressure. "Show me heat mapping," she said. He tapped a key. Color washed over the lobby image, blue along the walls and floor, yellow where bodies would move. "There," Claire said, pointing at a faint patch near the third turnstile. "Coverage dips. Someone stands there with a coat, the system loses confidence." "I can adjust the angle," Hernandez said. "Maybe add a sensor." "Do it," she said. He made a note on a pad. On another screen, Lucas finished with the exit sign and pushed his cart away. The system tracked him in green. Claire did not look at him. To her, he was one dot on a different display, a small piece of movement in a crowded building. "Send me the updated baseline report when the shift ends," she said. "Yes, ma'am." She turned and left. The door closed behind her. In the hallway outside, the carpet hushed the sound of her steps. She walked past framed photos of old factory floors and the first Hawthorne warehouse. Glass doors opened into an office level. Desks sat quiet in dim light. Computer screens were dark. Claire crossed the floor without slowing. Her planner ticked through her mind. Call with Tokyo. Review of merger files. Board check-in. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at the message. Toledo plant safety report received, all green. She read it once, locked the screen, and slipped the phone away. Near the windows above a door, an exit sign flickered. The light dipped and rose again. A lamp beside it buzzed. Claire's path did not bring her near it. On the level below, Lucas pushed his cart into the main elevator lobby. Here, the marble floor was polished enough to hold shallow reflections. The air smelled of cleaner and metal. He hitched his bag higher on his shoulder. Something bright caught the corner of his eye near one set of doors. He stopped the cart. One wheel squeaked and fell, quote. Up close, the bright points resolved into tiny shards of glass. A curved piece no bigger than his fingernail. Another beside it. Lucas looked up. One of the slim glass globes in the overhead fixture had a hairline crack. He lowered himself to one knee. The marble was cool under his weight. He took a folded cloth from his pocket and pressed his fingers into the shards. They bit at the pads of his fingers. A line of red welled up along his thumb. He sucked in a breath and curled his hand tighter not to drop anything. Behind him, the elevator doors slid open. A woman stepped out in a blazer and bright heels, a laptop bag on her shoulder, a phone pressed between her ear and her cheek. No, that forecast will not play, she said, walking fast. You need a better story than that. Her eyes were locked ahead. She did not see the man kneeling in front of her or the glass he held. Lucas shifted his body just enough that his shoulder drew her path to the left. Her heel clicked down on clean marble instead of the glittering arc. She brushed past him. Her perfume hung for a moment in the air, then faded. She vanished around the corner. Lucas unfolded the cloth over the open trash bag on his cart. The glass made a faint crackling sound as it fell. He wiped the thin streak of blood from his thumb and folded the cloth again. Then he took his mop, dipped it, and ran it lightly over the floor where the shards had been. The water left a thin sheen that caught the light in a smooth curve. Above him, the camera in the ceiling watched. In the security room, a line of text blinked for a second on a side monitor. Hazard resolved. Cause broken fixture. Resolver facilities support. No one glanced at it. Lucas studied the floor one last time, then straightened. His back pulled at the base of his spine. He rolled his shoulders and took hold of the cart. The wheels squeaked again as he headed toward the next bank of elevators. Somewhere above the building's front doors unlocked for the day, and the first gust of cold air and footsteps swept into the marble lobby. By 7, the lobby no longer belonged to the night shift. Light poured through the glass front, white and thin from the winter sky. Outside, the city shuffled past in coats and scarves. Inside, the marble shone under rows of recessed fixtures. The air smelled of coffee-cold air and the citrus cleaner someone had used an hour before. Turnstiles faced the doors like a set of teeth. Above them, a black strip of cameras watched. A line of flat screens behind the reception desk showed Hawthorne stock prices, market news, and the Hawthorne Dynamics logo. Security badges beeped as the first employees arrived. The sound blended with murmur and heel clicks. A barista cart near the windows hissed steam. On the wall behind the desk, a small square of gray plastic blinked. Sentinel was awake. In the security room, Hernandez watched the lobby feed expand across the center screen. Heat maps ran along the edges, blue for walls, yellow for bodies, thin red lines along the turnstiles. He took a sip of coffee. It had gone from lukewarm to cold. More green rectangles appeared on the screen as employees filed in. Each held a line of text. ID Park, Jenny Roll, Marketing Threat Baseline. ID Hughes, Mark Roll, Finance, Threat Baseline. The elevator doors opened on the ground floor. Lucas stepped out with his cart. His shift was almost over. He had made his way down floor by floor. The mop water in his bucket was gray now. The trash bags on his cart bulged with paper towels and food wrappers. The canvas bag rode his shoulder heavier than it looked. The strap had worn thin in one spot. He adjusted it higher so it stopped digging into the same patch of skin. He parked the cart near the service alcove behind the lobby, wiped his hands on a rag, and took off his gloves. The elevator doors closed behind him with a soft thud. From here, he could see the lobby sideways. People moved in a constant line through the turnstiles. The sound of shoes on stone came in waves. He checked the wall clock, 7:02. If he left now, he could catch the early train, get home in time to fry eggs before Jonah woke up. He picked up his bag and slung it across his chest. The strap cut a diagonal over the Hawthorne logo stitched on his shirt. The glove inside pressed a hard curve against the side of his ribs. Lucas stepped out from the alcove into the main lobby. For a moment, the brightness made his eyes narrow. He blinked, adjusted, and turned toward the row of turnstiles marked exit. On the security screen, a new green rectangle appeared at the edge of the image. ID Grant Lucas, Role Facilities, Support Threat Baseline. Hernandez watched him for half a second more, out of habit than interest. Lucas walked at an easy pace. He nodded once to the receptionist when she glanced up, more reflex than greeting. "Morning," she said, already looking past him to the next badge. He set a hand on the glass panel of an open turnstile. The sensor beneath it blinked, waiting for a badge scan. As he moved, the bag at his side swung forward slightly. Inside, the glove shifted. The warped plastic rubbed against the sketchbook, and the small first aid kit then settled near the front corner of the bag. On the ceiling directly above the row of gates, one of the sentinel cameras rotated. In the security room, a new window popped open. Object unknown, source unregistered, carry item, signature, thermal residual, uniform density, anomaly, confidence, 87. The green rectangle around Lucas flickered to yellow. Hernandez frowned and straightened in his seat. On the lobby screen, a thin red outline drew itself around Lucas's torso. The speakers in the security room crackled. Alert, a neutral voice said. Exception profile. Potential threat detected. ID Grant Lucas. A soft chime sounded in the lobby ceiling. The light strips along the turnstiles flashed. The thin gray plastic box on the wall went from green to red. Lucas's palm pressed the gate glass a second too early. The panel locked. A louder tone cut through the lobby noise. It was not loud enough to hurt, just sharp enough to rearrange attention. People slowed. Some turned. Near the back wall, a man in a dark suit looked up from his phone and watched the lights above the gates change color. At the far end of the hall, the doors to the executive mezzanine opened. Claire stood there, one hand on the rail, a tablet under her arm. She had not gone home. Her eyeliner had smudged slightly at the corners. A coffee stain marked one edge of a folder she carried. She looked down at the lobby. Source, she said. Hernandez's voice came through a small device clipped to the rail. Sentinel flagged an object on a support staff member, he said. Thermal and density mismatch. Confidence 87 and climbing. Which member? Grant Lucas. Claire's eyes moved across the lobby and landed on the man with the blocked gate. He stood still, his hand still on the glass, his bag at his side. He had the look of someone who had learned not to move quickly around authority. Lock the gates, Claire said. The turnstile lights flipped from white to red. Their glass panels stiffened. The small buzz gates made when they unlocked, cut off. A tiny delay ran under the crowd, a moment of confusion. Get two on him. At the far corners of the lobby, two security guards stepped away from the walls and headed toward Lucas. Their uniforms matched down to the shine on their shoes. One of them was taller, with a radio at his shoulder. Sir, the taller one said as he reached Lucas, I need you to step away from the gate, please. Lucas looked from the red light on the gate to the guard's face. What is going on? He asked. We have an alert on your bag, the guard said. Can you place it on the floor and step back? People had stopped walking through the gates now. Some stood a little distance away, badges in hand, watching. Others drifted toward the glass walls where the view was better. A woman with a paper cup of coffee leaned toward a colleague and spoke under her breath. What did he do? No idea, the other whispered back. Must be serious. Look at the lights. Lucas glanced up at the red strip over his head. His stomach tightened. It is just my stuff, he said. Lunch. You have seen me come through here every day. We need you to do it anyway, the guard said. Bag on the floor. Step back. His voice was not harsh, but it did not leave room. Lucas swallowed and slid the strap off his shoulder and set the canvas bag on the polished marble. The worn bottom sagged a little. He took 3 steps back. The marble under his boots seemed too bright. The shorter guard moved in, crouched and unzipped the bag. Claire walked down the stairs from the mezzanine, each heel landing clean and crisp. People parted as she passed. Derek Cole slipped out of the elevator lobby, at the same time balancing a tablet and a stainless steel mug. He saw Claire coming and matched her path with a small, eager shift. What is happening? He asked. Sentinel flagged a support worker, she said. He looked at the man near the gates. Oh, he said, the janitor. Claire did not respond. The guard reached into the bag and lifted the first item out. A spiral notebook with a cardboard cover. The words, Hero Dad, had been printed across it in marker, each letter outlined and filled in with color. The edges were dented and curling. A corner had a small coffee ring. The guard flipped it open. Crayon drawings filled the pages. Stick figures in blue shirts. A tall building made of rectangles. A red glove drawn larger than the hand wearing it. He held the notebook up. Someone near the back snorted. That is cute, a voice muttered. Sad but cute. The guard set the notebook carefully on the floor beside the bag and reached in again. He pulled out a plastic container with a blue lid fogged at the edges from cold. A sandwich wrapped in wax paper. An apple with a small bruise, a handful of crackers and a napkin, a small box of adhesive bandages, and a travel bottle of antiseptic. Derek took a sip from his mug, lips twisting. Health and safety, he said softly to the woman beside him, on brand. She pressed her lips together to hide a smile. The guard lined the items up beside the bag, then reached in once more. His hand found hard plastic with uneven edges. He lifted it out. The lobby sound dulled. It was a small glove sized for a child's hand, red plastic over the back gray fabric at the palm. The red had melted in places, bubbled and scorched, pulled back from the edges as if it had tried to crawl away. The lightning bolt logo, that should have been bright and clean, was smeared into a dark blistered streak. The guard held it by the wrist. The fingers sagged. A murmur rippled through the watchers. "What is that? Is that burned? Why would you bring that here?" The smell of coffee and citrus cleaner seemed to recede for a moment, replaced by something dry and bitter at the back of Lucas's throat. His hands curled at his sides. "It is just a glove," someone said. "Throw it out." Derek stepped closer, eyes on the warped plastic. "You find the strangest things in the wrong places," he said. "In a building like this that qualifies as trash." He looked at Lucas, his expression somewhere between amused and offended. "And here I was thinking, we paid people to take trash out, not bring it in," he said. A few laughs answered him, quick, sharp, not entirely comfortable. Claire stopped beside the guards and looked down at the glove. She did not touch it at first. Her eyes moved from the half-burned lightning bolt to the melted fingers and back again. "Mr. Grant," she said, her voice even, "explain what you are carrying." Lucas met her eyes. They were a clearer gray than they looked from a distance. "It is my son's," he said. It mattered to him. Claire's gaze flicked to the line of objects on the floor. Notebook, food, bandages, the tired canvas bag. "And you thought it was appropriate to bring a burned item into a secure facility?" she asked. "It is not dangerous," Lucas said. "It has been with me for years. It is just plastic and cloth." "That is not the point," Derek said before she could answer. "Look at it. Optics, hygiene. We are closing a major deal this quarter. You want visiting partners seeing staff carrying around burned toys?" Claire did not look at him. She kept her eyes on Lucas. "The system flagged a threat," she said. "We take that seriously. You should have considered that before you decided to bring personal items of this nature into the building." Lucas opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. "I have done this job for 3 years," he said. "The bag comes with me. The glove comes with the bag. Nothing has happened. And now something has," Claire said. "You are being given a chance to understand impact." Her words landed calmly like a line read from a report. The glove hung between them, its burned plastic catching the light. Claire held out her hand. The guard placed the glove in her palm. It sat there like something found at the bottom of a fire pit. Melted wrinkles in the plastic caught the lobby lights. The burned edge of the lightning bolt scraped her skin when she turned it. She did not flinch. "Mr. Grant," she said, "this is not acceptable." Her voice carried through the space. The hum of conversation around them shifted, then thinned. "You put the integrity of this building at risk," she said. "Sentinel flagged you as an exception. That is not a small thing." Lucas watched her fingers close around the glove. "It is not a weapon," he said. "It is a reminder of what Derek said, a bonfire in your living room." A few smiles flickered and disappeared. Claire ignored him. "This is a professional environment," she said. "We ask our staff to bring only what is necessary for their roles. You chose not to follow that." Lucas felt heat crawl up the back of his neck. "I mop floors," he said. "I take out trash. I fix the things people step over. That bag is part of the job. The glove is part of the bag. And now we are having this conversation in front of half my lobby," Claire said, "which means it is time to talk about consequences." Silence grew between the words. The guard beside the bag shifted his weight. Someone coughed once near the back. Claire looked at Lucas, then at the line of curious faces watching. Effective immediately, she said, "Your employment with Hawthorne Dynamics is terminated. Security will escort you to gather any personal belongings and then to the exit. You can contact Human Resources for details regarding your final paycheck." The words landed with the finality of a door locking. Lucas stared at her for a second, as if he had not heard correctly. "You are firing me," he said. "Yes," she said. "I start nights here at 11, he said. "I leave at 7. Then I go home and make breakfast for my son. I take him to school. I come back and sleep 4 hours so I can do it again. There is not a lot of extra room in that schedule. You should have considered that before bringing questionable items into a secure workplace," Claire said. He took a breath. It felt shallow. "It is just a glove," he said. "It has been in that bag for years. Nothing has ever happened. And now something has," she said. He saw no anger in her face, only a clean, distant certainty. "And if I argue?" he asked. She raised an eyebrow. "Then you waste more of my morning," she said. His shoulders dropped. He bent and began gathering the things from the floor. Notebook, sandwich, apple, crackers, bandages. His fingers shook. The bruise on the apple looked darker. The guard held out the glove. Lucas reached for it. The elevator chimes sounded. It cut through the soft murmur of the lobby, high and clear. People who had started to drift away turned their heads. The doors of one of the central elevators slid open. Margaret Hawthorne stepped out. She did not move fast. She did not have to. The floor seemed to notice her before she reached it. Her white hair was pulled back into a neat twist. A dark coat hung from her shoulders. A thin cane tapped the marble at each step. Conversations thinned as she walked. Small gaps opened in front of her without anyone signaling. The receptionist straightened. Derek's posture shifted almost imperceptibly. "Mrs. Hawthorne," someone whispered. Margaret took in the blocked turnstiles, the red lights, the small circle of stillness in the middle of the lobby. Her gaze settled on the glove. It was still in the guard's hand, fingers drooping, plastic dull and warped. She slowed. Her cane struck the marble once sharply. The sound turned heads. "What is going on?" she asked. Her voice was not loud. The room arranged itself anyway. Claire stepped half a pace forward. "We had a sentinel alert," she said. "A facilities worker brought a burned item into the building. I am dealing with it." Margaret's eyes did not leave the glove. "Bring that here," she said. The guard glanced at Claire. Claire gave the smallest nod. He crossed the few steps to Margaret and placed the glove in her open hand. Margaret lifted it closer to her face. Up close, the burned plastic had a texture like tree bark that had gone through a storm. The lightning bolt was a blurred scar. The gray fabric at the palm was stiff with old heat. Her fingers trembled as they traced one melted ridge. Color left her cheeks. "No," she said almost too quietly to hear. "That is not possible." Her attention left the glove and found Lucas. There was a long beat where she only looked at him, eyes over the top of the little ruined thing in her hand. Her gaze moved over his face, his height, the way his right foot set slightly ahead of the left, as if braced. "Where did you get this?" she asked. Lucas felt every eye in the lobby move with hers. "It was there," he said, "at the Gary site." "Which site?" she said. "Say the address." "Industrial Road," he said. "Old paint warehouse." When she said, he took a breath. 7 years ago, he said. Something behind Margaret's eyes changed. A tightening. A small contained flash. Claire frowned. "Mother," she said, "what is it?" Margaret ignored her. She closed her hand around the glove again and stepped closer to Lucas until she was near enough to see the lines around his eyes. "You were there," she said. He swallowed. "Yes," he said. "At the warehouse," she said. "When it burned." The word hung between them. Burned. Lucas exhaled. The sound was quiet and rough. "I was doing contract work," he said. "They needed extra hands on electrical. I was in the West Wing when it started." Margaret's grip on the cane tightened. Her knuckles went pale. "Do you remember August 23rd? 23rd, she asked. A flicker crossed his face. Sunlight through smoke memory pushing into the present. "Hard to forget," he said. Margaret's throat worked once. She turned her head to look at Claire, then back at Lucas. There was a vague awareness in the room that something important was shifting, even for those who did not know why. "Say your name," Margaret said. "Lucas Grant," he said. She nodded slightly, as if the sound matched something she had heard before, in a different place. Her gaze moved to his collar. She reached out one slow hand. "May I?" she asked. He hesitated, then nodded. She tapped 2 fingers against the edge of his collar. He pulled it aside. A scar curved from the base of his neck down toward his shoulder. It was a pale knotted line, wider in the middle, the kind left by heat and pressure. The skin around it had a faint, uneven shine. Margaret's inhale was short. It seemed to catch halfway. Claire stared. "Mom," she said. The word came out thinner than she intended. "Who is he?" Margaret did not look away from the scar. "He is the reason you are alive," she said. The sentence landed flat, almost ordinary in tone. It dropped through the lobby like something heavy into water. Claire's mind slid backward before she wanted it to. The warehouse, the smell of oil and dust, the first pop of a faulty breaker, white light, then nothing. A headache started just behind her eyes. Lucas stood very still. He watched Margaret as if she might suddenly change her mind. "I do not understand," Claire said. Margaret let the collar fall back into place and turned so she faced her daughter and the crowd together. 7 years ago, she said, our old storage facility in Gary caught fire during a safety inspection. You were there. "I know that," Claire said. "I know there was a fire. The doctors told me I lost some detail." "Some detail," Margaret repeated quietly. She looked past Claire, past the screens on the walls, to a place none of them could see. "It was August," she said. "Hot and close, even inside. The warehouse sat at the end of a road nobody bothered with anymore. Old paint and solvents stacked in racks that should have been cleared out years before." Her voice did not lift. It just kept going. "You went there with a clipboard and a hard hat," she said. "You were 25 and determined to prove you belonged in the field and not just on a boardroom floor. You told me you did not need an escort. You wanted to walk the aisles yourself. Claire looked down for a second. She could see flashes, rows of metal shelving, labels on cardboard boxes, a cracked concrete floor, a fan turning slowly with a dry rasp. In the back of her mind, a faint smell rose, thick, chemical. In the east wing, the wiring was older than you, Margaret said. We had paperwork in a folder that said it was scheduled for replacement. No one had done it yet. Across the lobby, the red lights over the gates stayed bright and steady. No one seemed to remember to reset them. You were standing under those lights when something sparked, Margaret said. She lifted the glove. The fire moved faster than anyone expected, she said. The chemicals did not burn. They exploded. The room seemed to grow hotter even as the air stayed the same. Lucas's eyes drifted for a second. In them, there was a reflection of a memory that did not belong to the others. Not board reports, not second-hand accounts, heat crawling up cinder block, smoke thick enough to chew, the sound of metal shifting when it got too hot. In the call I got, Margaret said they told me the building was compromised. They told me the fire brigade was on site but could not reach you yet. They told me you were inside on the fall line. Her hand on the cane shook once, then steadied. I stood behind a taped line on the asphalt, she said. I watched that building burn. Every minute felt like 10. They told me to stay back. They told me to let them work. She looked at the glove in her hand. They did not tell me about him, she said. Margaret let the silence sit for a beat. When the alarms went out, she said the nearest engine was 6 minutes away. The call logged it as a warehouse fire with possible chemical involvement. Her eyes were not in the lobby anymore. They set up their lines, she said. They brought ladders. They did what they are trained to do. But the east side was already a wall of fire. The captain told me the words nobody wants to hear. He said they could not send his people into a collapse zone without gear rated for that kind of heat. She lifted her chin slightly, as if she could still see him standing in front of the burning building. I asked how long it would take to get that gear, she said. He said 10 minutes, maybe 15. He said they would try to reach you when they could. Until then, they had to hold the line. The lobby around her stayed very still. Someone near the back shifted weight. The sound carried farther than it should have. I remember the sound of the fire, Margaret said. It was not like a fireplace. It was louder than the trucks. It sounded like metal screaming. Claire's fingers tightened around the tablet she still held. A smear of smoke seemed to slide across the edges of her memory, not sharp images, impressions. A heat that hit like a wall, a brightness that turned white. Margaret looked at the glove again. And then she said before the specialized unit arrived, someone moved where no one was supposed to be. Her gaze slid to Lucas. In the security footage, she said he is a blur at first. A man in a hard hat running toward the east entrance while everyone else is moving away. No mask, no tank, just a piece of cloth around his mouth and a stubborn streak wider than the building. Lucas looked at the floor. It was not that dramatic, he said. Margaret did not seem to hear him. You went in through the west door, she said, the one by the loading bay. The words made something behind Lucas's ribs tighten. He could feel the handle in his hand again, the way the metal had already heated, the way the door had stuck for a second, and then given way. He could hear the roar on the other side. A sound like 100 furnaces opening at once. Smoke had hit him low first at the knees, then the chest as it rolled. He remembered dropping down, tying a wet rag across his nose and mouth. The concrete under his palms had already felt warm. You were in there longer than you should have been, Margaret said, by every safety standard they teach. Her voice had lost its public smoothness. It carried rough edges. Lucas did not argue. He saw again the aisle between the racks, black drums with peeling labels, paper boxes starting to curl and blacken, flame crawling along a beam above him, and then jumping ahead as if it had somewhere to be. He saw the yellow hard hat on the floor cracked. He saw a boot not his near the end of the row. In the report, Margaret said they wrote that the interior cameras failed 2 minutes into the fire. We do not have video of what happened in those aisles. She met Lucas's eyes. You do, she said. He drew in a slow breath. Smoke and heat lived in the back of his throat with the memory even now. I heard someone shouting at first, he said. Then it stopped. The sprinklers never came on. The smoke was sitting low. I stayed down as long as I could. I almost turned around twice. The lobby faded at the edges for him. For a moment, he was back in that corridor, one hand on the wall, to feel his way forward, the other shielding his face. I found her near the racks, he said. She was on the floor. Hard hat off. Clipboard gone. She was not moving. Claire's heartbeat picked up. She did not consciously remember being on any floor. Only a sensation of falling, then nothing for a long time. I checked if she was breathing, Lucas said. She was, barely. I did not have anything to give her, and I did not have time to think about clever plans. So, I picked her up. He looked down at his hands as if he could still feel the weight. She was lighter than some of the equipment I had carried, he said. She felt heavier. Margaret's fingers tightened around the glove. On the outside cameras, she said, they see you come out of the smoke. Half burned, half carrying. You come through a door that the fire captain had already written off. You cross 10 yards of open ground while pieces of the roof are coming down behind you. A faint image formed in the minds of the listeners. A man emerging with a body over his shoulder, heat shimmering around them. Lucas remembered the way his boots had stuck briefly with each step. The ground had been covered in a thin layer of melted plastic and ash. It had gripped soles like glue. He remembered the moment a beam had fallen behind them, the impact shaking the air like thunder. You put her down on the asphalt, Margaret said. They took her from you. They rushed her toward the ambulance. All the focus shifted to the stretcher and the monitors and the oxygen. Her mouth pressed into a thin line. Almost no one looked at you, she said. Lucas remembered the sudden absence of weight in his arms, the empty feeling and the ringing in his ears, the way his legs had wanted to fold. He remembered coughing so hard he thought the inside of his chest would come up. He had leaned against the side of a truck for a second just to stay upright. A scene played behind Margaret's eyes that only she and a handful of others had been present for. One of the officers did, she said. He saw you near the truck. Your shirt was smoking. One of your boots had half melted. You were leaving prints on the ground, wet and dark. She looked at his feet now. The boots were different, but the way he stood was the same. Weight more to one side, ready to move without drawing attention. The officer asked for your name, she said. He said they would need it for the report, for any commendation. He told you there would likely be a ceremony. People like ceremonies. Lucas's jaw tightened. He remembered the man, the reflective vest, the clipboard, the pen already uncapped ready to write. He was just doing his job, Lucas said. What did you tell him? Margaret asked. Lucas looked at the glove in her hand. For a moment, his voice seemed to come from somewhere inside a helmet. I told him to make sure she was safe, he said. That was it. In the witness statement, Margaret said they wrote, quote, subject refused to give name and left the scene on foot. She looked down at the glove again. You grabbed this from a donation bin by the door, she said. The plastic boxes with kid-sized safety gear for a school program. You had burned through one boot. You used the glove to keep your foot from sticking to the ground every step you took away from my burning warehouse. The image landed sharp. A grown man with a child's glove pulled over a ruined sock, limping away while sirens wailed behind him. I did not plan it, Lucas said. It was just there. The lobby spread out around them, the people the polished marble, the turnstiles with their frozen red lights. For a moment, none of it seemed more real than the concrete outside that old warehouse. Margaret exhaled. They took my daughter to the hospital, she said. They told me she had smoke damage. They told me she would wake up. They told me she might not remember everything. She looked at Claire and there was something soft in her eyes that did not show up in quarterly reports. They were right, she said. Claire's lips parted. She did not trust her voice. In the days after Margaret said, we pulled every feed we could. We tried to freeze your face from the exterior cameras. Every angle was blocked by smoke or masks or helmets. We put notices out. We asked anyone who knew the man who had come out of that building to step forward. Her mouth twisted. No one did, she said. Her fingers smoothed the burned ridge on the glove. I never forgot that line in the report, she said. As long as she is safe, that is all he said. She turned fully toward the watching crowd. The reason my daughter stands here today as your chief executive is not a stock price or a smart decision made in this lobby, Margaret said. It is a decision made in thick smoke by a man in work boots who did not feel the need to be thanked and did not feel the need to be seen. Her hand opened. She held the glove up by the wrist. This belonged to him, she said. He used it to keep moving after the fire tried to stop him. He kept it for 7 years. In a bag he carries through our building, while most of you walk past him without ever seeing his face. Her gaze settled on Lucas again. And today she said your new machine labeled him a threat. My daughter fired him in the same breath as she called him an exception. The room seemed to tighten. A heat that had nothing to do with flames crept into cheeks and ears. Derek's shoulders had lost some of their lazy angle. His hand tightened on the mug. Claire stood very straight. A pulse moved in her neck. Lucas shifted his weight from one foot to the other. He felt the floor under his boots as if testing that it was still solid. Margaret lowered the glove and wrapped her fingers around it as if it might slip away. This man, she said, and now her voice dropped until the space leaned in to catch it, carried you out of a burning building, Claire. He walked away when he could have stood in front of cameras. He came back here and took a job pushing a cart so he could raise his son. She looked from her daughter to the man in the plain shirt. He saved your life once, she said. No one in the lobby seemed to be breathing. Claire's fingers had gone numb around the tablet. For a second she thought she might drop it. She set it on the receptionist's desk without looking. Mother, she said, you cannot be sure. There could have been other contractors, other men, other... Margaret turned her head slowly. You think there are many men, she said, who walk into a chemical fire without gear, walk back out with my daughter on their shoulder, refuse to give a name, and happen to keep a burned child's glove from that same building in their bag for 7 years. The words hung there. No one tried to answer them. Derek shifted his weight, then cleared his throat. Mrs. Hawthorne, he said carefully. With respect, we did not have this information. Claire made a call based on security protocol. Optics liability, investor confidence. From a leadership standpoint, it was the only responsible choice in the moment. Margaret's eyes moved to him. You are Derek Cole, she said. Operations. Yes, ma'am, he said. We have worked closely on the merger. I am sure you recall our last review. I recall, she said. I recall you recommending we outsource half a plant to increase margins by 2%. I also recall you suggesting we cut night staff in this very building because in your words, no one sees them. Color crept up the side of his neck. That was a business analysis, he said, not a value judgment on individuals. She glanced once at the glove in her hand. It sounded like one, she said. She let that sit a second, then turned back to Claire. You stood up there, she said, nodding toward the mezzanine, and fired the man who carried you out of that warehouse. You did it in front of your employees. You did it while holding the product of his pain in your hand. Lucas stared at the floor. His jaw worked once as if he was chewing on something he could not swallow. Claire looked at him. For the first time since she had walked downstairs, she really saw his face. The tired lines around his eyes. The mark on his cheek where a mask had once sat too long. The way he held his shoulders as if he had been bracing for something for a long time. Her chest tightened. Everyone, she said. Her voice was quieter than before, but it carried. This situation is no longer yours to watch. A few glances met hers, then dropped. Back to your desks, she said. Now. It was not a shout. It did not need to be. The crowd began to thin. First in small clusters, then in a stream. Badges beeped through the turnstiles once Hernandez reset the locks. The red lights flicked back to white. The barista cart hissed again as someone ordered another drink, though the words were hushed now. Derek lingered. Claire, he started, we should handle this in a contained way. I can draft a statement for internal communications. We will need to manage how this looks to staff. Perhaps spin the narrative around the strength of our security response, and Claire looked at him. Manage, she repeated. Yes, he said. We do not want people thinking the system is wrong, or that we are reactionary. We can stress that our procedures work, that leadership took swift actions when new information came to light. We can protect both Sentinel and the leadership image. Margaret's mouth thinned. Claire's eyes did not leave his. Derek, she said, go to your office. He blinked. I can be more useful here, he said. This touches operations. It touches the merger. I should be in the room when we discuss next steps. This is not a discussion, Claire said. Go to your office. Wait there for a call from Human Resources. The color in his neck darkened. You cannot be serious, he said. You want to punish the one executive who was actually supporting you in applying protocol. You mocked a man's life in front of my staff, Claire said. You called his belongings trash. You treated his existence as an inconvenience. That is not protocol. That is your character. The lobby seemed to shrink around them. I have given 12 years to this company, Derek said. I have grown this portfolio. You know what I bring to the table. She did not look away. Today, she said, you brought a stainless steel mug and a lack of humanity. Go. For a moment, he did not move. Then he turned, lips pressed tight, and walked toward the elevators. The door slid shut on his reflection. Silence settled harder once he was gone. Claire drew a breath and looked at the guards. Thank you, she said. You can return to your posts. They nodded and stepped away. One of them glanced at Lucas with a brief apologetic flick of his eyes before turning. Hernandez's voice came softly from the device on the rail. Ma'am, he said, Sentinel is ready for reset. Do you want me to clear the alert log on this event? No, Claire said. Lock it, tag it. I want it preserved exactly as it is. She picked up her tablet from the desk. Her hand brushed the damp ring her coffee cup had left there earlier. It looked like a faint, uneven circle. She turned to Lucas. I am not going to do this in a lobby, she said. Will you come upstairs with me? Lucas looked from her to Margaret. Do I have a choice, he asked. Yes, Claire said. He let out a slow breath. "Then I will come," he said. Margaret tucked the glove into the pocket of her coat. The shape bulged against the fabric. She lifted her cane. "Let us go," she said. They crossed the lobby together. The morning flow parted around them. Some people pretended not to watch. Others did not bother hiding it. In the elevator, the air felt smaller. The doors closed with a soft click. Lucas stood near the back, holding the strap of his bag. Claire stood by the panel, her finger resting lightly against the highest floor button. Margaret leaned on her cane eyes on the doors, as if she could still see the burning warehouse on the other side. Nobody spoke. The elevator hummed as it rose. Numbers ticked overhead. 10, 16, 20. Lucas watched the floor count climb. He had cleaned every corridor in this building, except the one they were heading to now. The top floor had always been someone else's job. He had only seen it from the outside lights on late when everyone else had gone home. The doors opened on a space of glass and wood. The top floor felt quieter than the rest of the building. Carpets muted footsteps. Walls of glass looked out over the city. The sky was a flat white sheet behind the towers. Claire led them down a short hallway. They passed offices with closed doors, a small lounge with a coffee machine, a framed photograph of the first Hawthorne factory, its bricks soot-stained and proud. At the end of the hall, a set of double doors stood open. Inside, the boardroom stretched long and pale. A table ran down the center big enough to seat 20. Leather chairs waited in a neat row. A strip of light fixtures hung above, reflecting off the polished wood. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the river and the lines of traffic below. Lucas hesitated on the threshold. He had vacuumed this carpet once when the usual crew was short. He had never walked this far into the room. "Sit," Claire said, motioning to one of the chairs near the middle. He set his bag gently on the floor beside it and lowered himself into the seat. The leather pushed back against his shoulders, unfamiliar. Margaret moved to the far side of the table, closer to the windows. She did not sit. She set her cane against a chair and kept the glove in her hand. Claire took the head of the table. The seat had a view of everyone in the room and the city beyond. It felt wrong now. She folded her hands on the wood in front of her. When she spoke, her voice did not sound like it had in the lobby. It was quieter, the edges less sharp. "Mr. Grant," she said, "I owe you an apology." He looked up at her. His eyes were wary, as if he expected the words to come with a catch. "I fired you without listening," she said. "I assumed I understood the situation because a system lit up, and because you looked from this distance like the easiest piece to remove." She took a breath. "I treated you as a problem to be removed from my lobby, instead of as a person who has been part of this building longer than I have been CEO," she said. "That was wrong." Lucas shifted his hand, brushing the edge of the table. "I have had people talk down to me before," he said. "I can live with that." "That is not the point," she said. She caught herself and let out a small, humorless sound. "You sounded a lot like me just now," she said. He nodded once. She looked down at her hands, then back at him. "When my father ran Hawthorne, he liked to say a company is only as strong as the way it treats its people, when it does not think anyone is watching," she said. "This morning I failed that." Margaret watched her with a look Lucas could not read entirely. Pride sat there, but also something like grief. "I cannot change what you heard in that lobby," Claire said. "I cannot unring an alarm or unmake a humiliation. What I can do is decide what happens next in the parts of this building I am responsible for." Her gaze held his. "I do not want you to leave Hawthorne," she said. "Not like this. Not at all if you are willing to stay." He frowned. "You just said I am not fit to work here," he said. "You said my bag made me a threat. I said what I thought, based on one slice of data, and my own blind spots," she said. "I was wrong. Sentinel saw a heat pattern and a density it did not recognize. It did its job as it was built. I did not do mine as I should have been." Margaret shifted her weight. "Machines do not choose," she said. "People do." Claire inclined her head in agreement. "I need you here," she said to Lucas. "Not as a cleaner we barely see, but in a role that actually matches what you have already been doing, whether we noticed it or not." He stared at her. "I fix things people trip over," he said. "I am not an engineer. I do not write safety manuals. I do not sit in rooms like this." "That has been our mistake," she said. She reached to her right and pulled a folder from a neat stack. It was thicker than the usual one-page summary. She slid it across the table until it sat in front of him. "Operation and safety review for the facilities we are about to acquire," she said. 4 plants in Ohio and Indiana. Electrical, structural, chemical storage. Our engineers have signed off. They say everything meets code." Lucas did not touch the folder yet. "You want me to read this," he said. "I want you to look at it the way you looked at that broken fixture by the elevator," she said. The way you looked at the old wiring in Gary 7 years ago. I want you to tell me where the paper misses what heat and time will actually do." He glanced at Margaret. She watched him steadily. "You understand what my daughter is asking," she said. "She is not asking for a favor. She is offering you a seat at this table in the only way that makes sense to you. Work to do, danger to spot, people to keep breathing." Claire nodded. "Director of Workplace Safety Initiatives," she said. "Reporting directly to me. Full benefits. Salary that matches the responsibility. A college fund set up for your son in your name, not mine." The words hung there like another kind of siren, quieter, but no less sharp. Lucas let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. "I am a janitor," he said. "My resume is a list of places I have mopped. The fanciest title I have ever had is night shift lead." "What do you think got you out of that warehouse?" Margaret said. "A line on a resume, or something else?" He did not answer. He looked down at the folder. It sat on the polished wood, thick with diagrams and numbers. The paper edges were crisp and clean. He set his hand on the cover. The scar on his neck itched the way it did sometimes before rain. He opened the folder. Pages of diagrams and tables stared back at him, lines of black print boxes with numbers, small notes in the margins. Lucas ran a thumb along the spine of the folder. The paper felt dry and smooth against skin that remembered heat. He turned the first page. Claire stayed quiet. Margaret moved a little closer to the window, but her attention was still on him. The city lay behind her shoulder, gray and distant. Lucas's eyes followed the layout of the first plant. Rectangles, labels, arrows. Electrical rooms marked in neat type. Storage zones shaded light blue. Ventilation systems drawn as dotted lines. It was a different world on paper than it had been in Gary. Clean, organized, no peeling labels, no crates from 3 owners ago. He looked past the labels at the way circuits ran, where high load met old infrastructure, where pipes crossed under power lines. He turned another page. "Take your time," Claire said. He did not answer. His fingers moved steadily. On the third plant he paused. The layout note at the top read, "Toledo Facility North Wing." He ran his eyes down the column. Material, aluminum branch wiring, environment, coolant, processing, heavy condensation, insulation, plastic standard, code, status compliant. He frowned. "Aluminum," he said. Claire leaned forward. "What about it?" she asked. He tapped the line with a finger. "High humidity," he said. "Coolant in open systems. You get sweating along the lines. Plastic cracks if the wrong tech cuts corners. Moisture gets in. Connections loosen over time." "That is not flagged as a violation," Claire said. "It will not be," he said, "on a form. It will look fine for a few years. Then one day a junction box gets hot. A little hotter than it should. Dust builds up. Somebody does not feel like shutting the line down to fix it. They put it off. 6 months, a year. Then a spark where no spark was supposed to be." His voice had gone flat. His mouth tasted metallic. The boardroom air felt thinner. Margaret's fingers tightened on the back of the chair beside her. "Gary had aluminum in a damp wing," he said, "with solvents and paint. They had a work order for upgrades. They just never got to it." Claire looked down at the notes, then back at him. "Do you see anything else like that?" she asked. "Probably," he said. He flipped a page. "But this one is enough." He slid the folder back toward her a few inches. "If you sign off on that wiring in that environment," he said, "you are buying a countdown. You just do not know which day it hits 0. Claire stared at the line he had marked. It sat there neat and harmless. She saw the word aluminum. She saw the word compliant. She heard the word countdown. "How sure are you?" she asked. He met her eyes. "I would not let my kid work there," he said. That was all. Claire reached for her phone. Her fingers moved fast, practiced. She hit one contact and lifted it to her ear. "Rashid," she said when someone answered, "where are we with the Hawthorne-Mercer signing this morning?" She listened a moment. "Move it," she said. "Put it on hold. Tell their team we are conducting an additional safety review on all incoming facilities. No signatures until that is clear." The voice on the other end rose. "I understand the optics," she said. "Here is a different lens. Legal risk, worker injury, plant loss. You can tell them whatever you need to about the pause. If they want this deal badly enough, they will wait for us to make sure they are not selling us a loaded matchbook." She ended the call and set the phone down on the table. "We will send our own team," she said. "Not the ones who wrote that report. People who are not used to seeing compliance as the finish line." She looked at Lucas. "I would like you to be part of that review," she said. "Not as a consultant we can ignore, as someone with authority to say no." He let out a slow breath. "You know, I did not go to school for this," he said. I have got some trade classes and a few burnt shirts on my record. That is about it. Your experience told you Gary was a problem, she said. Your experience told you that line in Toledo is a problem. Degrees can teach many things. They cannot teach that kind of memory. Margaret sat down at last. The cushion moved under her, but she held herself upright. Do you trust our engineers? She asked her daughter. With a lot of things, Claire said. And do you trust this man? Margaret asked, nodding at Lucas to know what heat does when it finds the one weak spot nobody saw. Claire did not look away from him. Yes, she said. Lucas looked from one woman to the other. You are serious, he said, about the job, about the title. I do not offer things I do not intend to keep, Claire said. He sat back slightly, the leather chair creaking. When I walk out of this room, he said, and I go downstairs, people are still going to see me as the guy who pushes the mop. Maybe as the guy who made a scene in the lobby. That is going to be on their faces when they look at me. Some of them, she said, not all, not forever. And you, he said, what do you see? She held his gaze. I see the man who got me out of a warehouse alive, she said. I see the man who kept a cheap safety glove in his bag, because it meant something he is not ready to explain to anyone, including me. I see the only person in this building who has carried me when I could not walk. Margaret's eyes shone, though no tears fell. Lucas looked down at his hands. Calloused, knitted, a faint line of older burn near his wrist. You know I will not wear a suit, he said, most days. Claire almost smiled. We have other people for suits, she said. I just need you to wear what you can move in. He lifted his head. Jonah, he said. Your son, she said. You mentioned him. He likes to draw, Lucas said. He draws me with a badge sometimes. Or with that glove. He calls it my hero glove. He is 6. He thinks in simple shapes. He swallowed. If I say yes to this, he said I want to be able to look at him and not feel like I lied. Claire nodded. Say yes, she said. Then do exactly what you have already been doing. See what no one else sees. Speak when it matters. If anyone has a problem with that, they can speak to me. He sat very still. Finally, he nodded. All right, he said. The word felt heavier than it sounded. Claire let out a slow breath, as if something inside her chest had been tight and had loosened a little. Then we will have HR handle the paperwork, she said. You are off the schedule for tonight's cleaning shift. Tomorrow we start going through every line of those reports together. He glanced at the clock on the wall. The hands had moved, but not much. The morning had already been long. I still need to go home, he said. Breakfast is not going to make itself. Margaret smiled small and real. Go, she said. We will still be here when you get back. He reached for his bag, then paused. If it is all the same to you, he said, I would like to keep bringing the glove. Claire looked at the bulge in Margaret's coat pocket. Margaret touched it once with her fingers. It will not be in a bag anymore, she said. It deserves better than almost getting thrown away again. Lucas's brow furrowed. What do you mean, he asked. You will see, Margaret said. Her tone left no room for argument, only quiet promise. He nodded and picked up his bag. The canvas rasped against his palm. He stood. The boardroom seemed to shift around him. The table did not look smaller, but it did not look as impossible. Thank you, he said. Claire shook her head. No, she said. I am the one who owes thanks. He did not know where to put his hands, so he settled for a short nod and walked toward the doors. His boots made almost no sound on the carpet. The elevator waited at the end of the hall. He pressed the button and watched the numbers scroll down toward him. On the ride to the lobby, he leaned his head back against the wall and closed his eyes for a second. The burned warehouse flickered behind them. The lobby scene tried to push in beside it. Over all of it, for the first time in a long while, was another image. Jonah at the kitchen table, feet swinging above the floor, pencil in hand, drawing a man in a blue shirt with something red on his hand. At home, the apartment smelled faintly of toast and laundry detergent. Jonah sat at the table like Lucas had pictured, hair sticking up, pencil moving. A carton of orange juice sweated on the counter. A pan sat cooling on the stove, 2 slices of bread inside it. Hey, Lucas said, hanging his keys on the hook. Jonah's head snapped up. You are late, he said. The cereal got lonely. I will make it up to it, Lucas said. Promise. He moved into the kitchen, poured coffee into a chipped mug, and took in the scene. Sketchbook open, crayons spread out like a small explosion, a half-finished drawing on the page. The drawing showed a tall building with many windows. A stick figure in a blue block for a shirt stood at the bottom, next to a smaller figure holding his hand. Above them in red, Jonah had drawn a glove so big it almost covered the sky. What is that? Lucas asked, nodding at the page. That is us, Jonah said. That is your building, and that is the glove. I made it bigger so everyone can see it. Lucas pulled out a chair and sat. The tiredness in his bones pooled, but something in his chest felt oddly light. Everyone, huh? He said. Yeah, Jonah said. Did you save anybody today? Lucas thought of the Toledo plant, of aluminum and damp air, of a signature that had not gone onto paper. I stopped something that could have hurt people, he said, before it started. Jonah considered that. His eyes were serious. That is still saving, he said at last. Lucas let his hand rest on the table. His fingers left a faint mark in flour dust near the edge. Yeah, he said quietly. It is. In the weeks that followed, people started hearing his footsteps in places they had never noticed them. They heard them in the stairwells where he paused to run his hand along a loose rail. They heard them in the parking garage where engines idled and exhaust hung low. He would stop near a concrete pillar and look up at a small store bought carbon monoxide detector clipped there by a security guard, a faint beep counting the air. You bought that yourself? Lucas asked the guard one morning. The man nodded, suddenly unsure. Picked it up on sale, he said. Figured it could not hurt. Lucas studied the detector for a second. You were right, he said. It does not hurt. It helps. He took out a small notebook and wrote the guard's name down. What is that for? The guard asked. Reminders, Lucas said. On paper, his new title ran long, Director of Workplace Safety Initiatives. It sat under his name in emails and on a badge that security printed for him. The badge still opened the service doors he had used as a janitor, but it opened other doors too, doors he had cleaned around without touching. He traded his blue work shirt for button-downs most days, though his boots stayed the same. The first time he walked into a plant manager's office in Ohio, the man behind the desk took in the boots and the scar at his collar, and did not make the joke that had formed in his eyes. Lucas spread the site diagram out on the table. Show me where people actually walk, he said. Not the route you put in the handbook. The shortcuts, the places they cut through because it saves a minute when they are tired. The manager hesitated, then pulled out a pen. On the map, the neat straight arrows from the manual were joined by softer curved lines. Through a storage bay instead of around it. Across a loading zone. Between two tanks. Lucas traced those paths with his finger. Now show me where the heat collects, he said. In long fluorescent lit corridors, he and a small team checked junction boxes, ducts, and vents. They listened to the way machines sounded when they were tired. They watched the way workers placed their hands on railings, the way they stepped over cables, the way they avoided certain corners without thinking. At Hawthorne headquarters, the changes were quieter. One morning, the exit signs that had flickered for years all glowed steady. The maintenance backlog that had lived in a spreadsheet moved onto a wall where everyone could see at each item a card that could be shifted from not safe to fixed with a hand. In a conference room on the 10th floor, Lucas stood in front of a whiteboard. The table was filled with people in different shirts and badges cleaning crew security IT/HR. The slide on the screen behind him read, Silent Steps in black letters. Underneath, in smaller type, Seeing danger before it shouts. He did not like speaking in front of groups, but he liked the idea of something catching fire even less. This is simple, he said. Most of the time, trouble does not start big. It starts as the thing you step around. The smell you tell yourself is nothing. The light you mean to report and forget. He pointed to the people in the room. You see those things, he said. Not because someone pays you extra to see them, because you are out there, because you are the ones walking through this building when everyone else has gone home or has not arrived yet. A housekeeper with gray in her hair raised a hand. What happens if we say something and no one listens? She asked. Lucas thought of his own years pushing a cart. Then that is our problem, he said. Not yours. I am giving you my phone number. You can text me a picture. You can send a note. If someone does not listen, it will not be me. He wrote the number on the board. Pen scratched as people copied it down. The first silent steps recognition came a week later. A gas smell in the kitchen level. Maria, the same housekeeper, sniffed it between wiping counters. She stepped outside, turned off the light, and made a call. Maintenance found a small leak in a line behind a cabinet, small enough to miss on a casual pass, big enough to matter over time. Maria did not think much of it. The next Monday, Claire called her up in front of a room full of staff. You shut off a light and made a phone call, Claire said. That is all, and that is exactly what we needed. She handed Maria a small pin with the Silent Steps logo, a stylized footprint heel to toe in silver. Maria pinned it to her uniform with fingers that shook. In the parking garage, the guard with the carbon monoxide detector received the second pin. He did not wear it on his uniform. He clipped it to the strap of the detector instead. Margaret visited the building more often. She no longer came just for board meetings and high-stakes calls. Some afternoons, Lucas would find her in the cafeteria with a cup of tea and a cookie watching people. She would tap her cane on the floor when she was pleased with what she saw. Jonah appeared too always with a sketchbook. On days when school let out early, he would sit in a corner of Claire's office, legs tucked under him drawing. The office had glass walls and a view of the river. It also had a framed copy of one of his drawings on the shelf behind her desk. It showed a man in a hard hat carrying someone out of a boxy building. The fire was a sheet of orange crayon. The glove on the man's hand was red, almost too red. "You know, this is not exactly how it looked," Claire told him once standing near the frame. "Yeah," Jonah said, "but it is how I like it." He did not seem intimidated by her title. To him, she was the person who let him use her good markers and kept a jar of candy on the corner of her desk. He had drawn her too. In one picture, she stood next to Lucas and Margaret in front of the Hawthorne building. Above them, instead of a logo, he had drawn a giant exit sign gleaming. "Why the sign?" Lucas asked when he saw it. "So people know where to go," Jonah said. Claire kept that drawing as well. In the evenings when most of the office had emptied, Lucas and Claire sometimes walked the floors together. He would point out the way an emergency door stuck an inch before it closed. She would talk through the changes in staffing the merger would bring. He did not always follow the financial details, but he understood the parts where bodies would be in new places, where machines would run that had not run before. One night they stood in the lobby again near the place where the glove had been pulled from his bag. The marble looked the same. The turnstiles waited in their row. The cameras watched. "You know, people still talk about that morning," Claire said. "I am sure they do," Lucas said. "Not all in the way you think," she said. "Some of them have started sending in reports they would have ignored. I have seen more hazard tickets in the last month than in the previous year." "Maybe they finally started looking down," he said. "Maybe they started looking at the people who do," she said. Their footsteps echoed softly as they turned toward the elevators. At her next board presentation, Claire included new slides: accident rates, response times, near misses caught before they became anything more. The numbers were not as flashy as revenue charts, but they had their own weight. Margaret sat at the head of the long table, the same place she had stood when she first faced Lucas. She listened without interrupting, one hand resting lightly on her cane. When Claire finished, the room was quiet for a moment. "Profit matters," one of the directors said at last. "Our investors expect it." "They should," Claire said. "It is why they are here." He nodded toward the safety slides. "Why give this so much room?" he asked. "This is a lot of attention for things that did not happen." Claire glanced at the numbers, then at him. "Because those things not happening are the reason we are still here to talk about profit," she said. Margaret hid a small smile behind her hand. After the meeting, she caught Claire in the hall. "You sound more like your father every day," she said. Claire shook her head. "I am trying not to," she said. "He would have trusted the paperwork more than the man who carried it." Margaret's eyes softened. "And yet," she said, "I think he would have liked the man." At home, in the small kitchen that held the breakfast table, and the drawings and the marks on the door frame where Jonah's height had been recorded each year, the routine changed too. Lucas still came in with tired eyes and the smell of the building on his clothes. He still made eggs and toast, but the questions at the table shifted. "Did you mop today?" Jonah asked once. "No," Lucas said. "I walked through a plant and told some people where they needed to fix things." "Did they listen?" Jonah asked. Lucas thought of the manager in Ohio nodding as an electrician took notes. "They did," he said. Jonah colored in a corner of his drawing. "That is good," he said. "Heroes talk. People should listen." Lucas poured syrup over Jonah's pancakes and tried not to show his smile. Outside, the city moved in its usual rhythm. Feet on sidewalks, tires on pavement, elevators carrying people up and down. Inside the Hawthorne building, more eyes watched exit signs and heard small sounds in the walls. More hands reached for phones at the first whiff of gas or hint of smoke. The burned glove was no longer riding in a canvas bag. It sat in a different place now, though not yet under a ballroom chandelier. The ballroom looked nothing like the warehouse in Gary, but the glove seemed to remember both places. It sat in a glass case near the front of the stage, elevated on a block of dark wood. A small focused light from above caught the warped red plastic and the stiff gray palm, throwing a thin shadow on the felt beneath it. The lightning bolt melted into a brown scar was clearer here than it had ever been at the bottom of a canvas bag. Servers moved between tables carrying plates. An orchestra played in the corner strings, weaving through the clink of glassware and the low hum of conversation. The ceiling soared, covered in crystal fixtures that scattered light across the room. People in tuxedos and gowns stopped to glance at the case as they passed. "Some kind of artwork," one man said to his partner. "It looks melted," she said. "Modern sculpture," someone else guessed. There was a small metal plaque at the base of the case. It was turned away from the crowd for the moment at the writing hidden. Near the side of the stage, Claire stood with a program in her hand. Her dress was black simple, with a line of silver at the collar, Her hair was pinned up. She wore no necklace, just a small pair of earrings and a slim watch. She looked at the glove. The first time she had seen it, it had been hanging from a guard's hand over a polished floor. Then it had been clenched in her mother's fist as she spoke about fire. Later, it had been on her desk resting on a white sheet of paper, while Margaret argued with the design team about how exactly it should be displayed. Now it seemed almost out of place under the ballroom lights. It was too small, too ugly, too real. "Ready," a voice said behind her. She turned. The event planner stood with a clipboard headset around his neck. His smile was practiced. "Whenever you are," he said. "We have the reel cued. The donors are seated. The board is ready. The only thing missing is you at the microphone." Claire glanced toward the tables. In the front row, she could see Margaret at a round table with several directors. Margaret wore a dark blue jacket. The cane leaned against her chair. Her hand rested on the tablecloth near a folded napkin and a wine glass. At the same table, there was an empty chair with a small reserved sign. Next to it, another chair was occupied by a boy in a gray suit jacket. His feet did not reach the floor. A napkin lay folded on his lap, already wrinkled. A set of colored pencils sat near his plate. Jonah. He was drawing on the back of his program tongue between his teeth in concentration. Lucas sat to his other side, a black tie slightly askew at his collar shoulders, uncomfortable in a rented jacket. "I am ready," Claire said. She walked toward the center of the room. The orchestra let their last notes trail off. The host for the evening stepped up to the microphone to introduce her. His words faded into the background of her thoughts. She climbed the small set of steps to the stage. From up here, the ballroom was a sea of faces and white tablecloths. The case with the glove sat off to her right, its glass catching the light. The host finished and stepped aside. Claire took her place at the microphone. She did not bring notes. The only paper on the podium was the printed agenda for the evening. "Good evening," she said. Her voice came back to her through the speakers a fraction of a second later. "Thank you for being here," she said. "Tonight we are doing what Hawthorne has done for years. We are looking back at what we have built and looking forward to what we want to build next." A few nods, a few smiles. It was the kind of line they expected. She let the words settle, then continued. "You know the story," she said. "You know the numbers on the slides. New markets, successful integrations, products launched on time. You have seen me talk about them before." On one of the screens behind her, a muted slideshow rolled through images of factories, software dashboards, workers in safety vests. "Those stories matter," she said. "They keep lights on and people employed. But there are other stories that do not show up in investor decks quite so easily. Stories about what did not happen." She glanced toward the front table just for a second. "In the last year, incidents in our facilities have dropped," she said. "We have less lost time, fewer injuries. We have avoided 4 separate events that could have been much worse than they were." Some faces in the crowd looked interested. Others looked as if they were waiting for the moment this would circle back to profit. "There are many reasons for that," Claire said. "New protocols, better equipment, training, all the usual bullet points." She paused. "But I am standing here tonight because of something much less polished than a bullet point," she said. "I am standing here because 7 years ago, when a warehouse in Gary caught fire, a man in work boots decided to run toward it instead of away." The room grew quieter. Conversations at the back thinned. "Most of you have heard me mention the Gary incident," she said. "You know the sanitized version. Inspection gone wrong, fire, recovery, new safety measures." Her hand tightened lightly on the edge of the podium. "What none of us knew until this year," she said, "was who actually carried me out of that building." She told the story in fewer words than Margaret had, but the core was the same. The old wiring, the chemicals in the East Wing, the delay while the right equipment arrived, the man in the West Wing who did not wait. "He refused to give his name," she said. "He walked away with a burned foot and a piece of children's safety gear as a makeshift shoe. For 7 years, he pushed a cart through our halls while most of us stepped aside without looking up." A ripple went through the tables. "In this last year," she said, "I almost made that his whole story. I almost sent him out of this building with a termination notice in his hand and the same glove in the trash." She let that land. "A machine saw a threat," she said. "What I saw was an inconvenience. I did not ask why a man might carry a burned glove. I did not ask why he might keep it so close. I only asked how quickly I could make the problem disappear from my lobby." The words were flat. They needed no polish. At that point, Claire said my mother stepped in. She nodded toward Margaret. A few people turned to look. Margaret inclined her head without standing. "She recognized the glove you see here," Claire said, gesturing toward the case. "She recognized the burn pattern. She recognized the way it had melted. and she recognized the man holding the bag it came from. She told them then about the scar on his neck, about the witness report, about the line, "as long as she is safe." She did not say hero. She did not have to. "I humiliated him in front of this company," she said. "Then I walked upstairs and asked him to keep us safe anyway." She finally turned fully toward the front row. "Lucas," she said, "would you and Jonah join me?" Lucas hesitated only long enough to put a hand on Jonah's shoulder. The boy slid off his chair, straightened his small jacket, and gripped his father's fingers. They walked together to the steps. Jonah counted them under his breath as he climbed. On stage, the lights were brighter. Jonah squinted for a moment, then grinned. Claire stepped away from the microphone long enough to meet them halfway. "Thank you for being here," she said softly. Lucas gave a short nod. "It seemed important," he said. They turned back to the crowd. "This is Lucas Grant," Claire said into the microphone. "For those of you who do not know him, he has worked at Hawthorne for years. For most of that time, you would have found him after hours behind a cart and a mop. In the last year, you would have found him somewhere very different." The screen behind them shifted to a slide of Lucas in a hard hat and reflective vest, standing in a plant corridor next to two technicians. He was pointing at something above the frame, expression focused. Since he took on the role of Director of Workplace Safety Initiatives, Claire said, "Reportable incidents are down 73% across our facilities. We have caught faults that would have cost us millions of dollars and needless pain. Those are the numbers. They are impressive. They are not the full picture." She looked at Lucas. "The full picture is that the same man who once carried me out of fire now walks through our buildings, teaching other people how to see the first spark before it grows," she said. She stepped to the side. Margaret rose from her seat and made her way to the stage with slow, steady steps. A staff member met her halfway with a small wooden box. On top of the box was the glass case. The glove inside looked smaller at this height. Margaret took the box in both hands and turned it so the plaque faced the room. The metal gleamed. In clear engraved letters it read, "In honor of Lucas Grant, who reminded us that the strongest walls are held up by the people who walk quietly beneath them." A hush ran through the hall. Somewhere at the back, a camera shutter clicked. Margaret placed the box on a stand beside Claire and stepped back. Lucas looked at the glove. It was the same object he had carried pressed to his ribs, the same one he had almost lost in front of the turnstiles. Here behind glass, it looked both more important and more foreign. Jonah reached for his father's hand again. "That is it," he whispered. "That is the glove." Lucas nodded. "Yeah," he said. "That is it." The orchestra conductor lifted his baton. The guests at the tables rose to their feet, chairs scraping. Applause filled the room loud and long. It rolled up to the chandeliers and down again. For once it did not stop after a polite interval. The applause kept coming. Lucas was not used to that sound directed at him. It rolled across the room in waves. His instinct was to step back, to make himself smaller, to fade into the background, the way he had learned to do in hallways and lobbies. Jonah's grip on his hand kept him in place. Claire waited for the clapping to ease. It took longer than she expected. When the sound finally softened, she lifted the microphone again. "Thank you," she said, "for celebrating what this glove represents. But if it only represented one man and one fire, it would be a small story. Tonight I wanted to stand for something larger. For every time someone notices a loose wire, or a smell that is not quite right, or a light that should be brighter." She glanced at Maria seated 2 tables back, the silent steps pin catching the light on her uniform, at the guard with the carbon monoxide detector pin on his strap, at Hernandez near the wall, hands clasped in front of him. "For the people whose footsteps you do not hear until something goes wrong," she said, "and for the fact that we are finally learning to listen before that." She stepped away from Lucas and Jonah and lifted her glass from the podium. "To silent steps," she said, "and to the people who take them." Glasses rose around the room. Crystal chimed. Some guests repeated the words under their breath. Others just drank. On stage, Lucas looked as if the floor might shift at any moment. Public recognition felt more dangerous than a dark corridor. "You handled a burning building," Claire said under her breath, without the microphone. "You can handle a room clapping for you." He gave a small, disbelieving laugh. Jonah tugged at his sleeve. "Can I give it to you now?" he asked. Lucas looked down. "Give what he asked." "The picture," Jonah whispered. "The one we talked about." The boy fumbled inside his jacket, pulled out a folded piece of paper, and smoothed it with both hands. The edges were soft from being handled. There was a faint line of red crayon on his cuff. "Take it to her," Lucas said. Jonah looked at Claire, then at the microphone, then at the crowd. For a second he seemed younger, swallowed by the room. Then he squared his shoulders in a way that looked like his father. He walked to Claire and held out the paper. "This is for you," he said. The microphone picked up his small voice and carried it to the corners of the ballroom. Claire took the paper carefully, as if it were thin glass, and unfolded it. On the page he had drawn 4 figures standing in front of a building. The building was tall and rectangular windows, marching up the sides in neat rows. Flames colored in orange and red rose from its middle, but they did not touch the people. One figure with short brown hair and a blue shirt carried another figure in a dark dress over his shoulders. A third with white hair and a cane stood nearby. A fourth smaller figure held the hand of the man in blue. Above them in Jonah's printing were the words, "Some people save your life once the best ones help you live it better." The letters were not perfectly straight. Some lines wobbled. The meaning did not. Claire felt something move behind her ribs. She traced the line of the words with her eyes once more before lowering the paper. She stepped away from the podium, crouched so she was at Jonah's level, and pulled him gently into a hug. "Thank you," she said in his ear, "for sharing your dad with all of us." Jonah hugged her back. His small hands pressed against the back of her dress. "You are welcome," he said. When she let him go, she stood and looked at Lucas. He met her eyes. There was pride there, and discomfort, and something like relief. "You know he is going to make a copy of that and hang it over the table," Lucas said quietly. "He is not the only one," Claire said. She walked back to the microphone for the last time that night. "This company started in a brick warehouse on a riverbank," she said. "We build different things now, software, systems, complex structures in steel and light. But under all of that, we still stand on something simple. People who show up. People who care enough to act when no one is watching." She did not look at the investors when she said it. She looked at the staff clustered by the walls, at the servers waiting near the doors, at the security team standing in the shadows. She set the microphone down. The formal part of the evening moved on. The orchestra picked up a brighter tune. Guests returned to their tables. Plates arrived. Conversations resumed. On stage, the glove stayed in its case, the tiny lightning bolt scar catching and losing the light with each change in the room. Later, when the crowd had thinned and the noise had dropped to a softer buzz, Lucas stood alone near the edge of the stage. The ballroom staff moved quietly, clearing plates. The orchestra packed away instruments. He looked at the case. His reflection hovered in the glass. Behind it, the warped red shape seemed smaller than he remembered. For years it had felt heavy as a stone in his bag. Now it sat light as air, nothing more than a few ounces of plastic and cloth and memory. "You all right?" Margaret asked. He had not heard her approach. Her cane made only the softest tap on the carpet. "I am not sure what to do with my hands," he said. She smiled. "Let them rest," she said, "just for tonight." She stood beside him, looking at the glove. "We could have lost you," she said, "in that warehouse, in the years after, in a lobby where you almost walked out the door for good." He did not answer. They both knew it. "Thank you," she said. He shook his head. "I did what I could," he said, "that day, this year. The rest is noise." She nodded once. "Sometimes," she said, "noise is just people learning how to say thank you properly." He let that sit. The chandeliers reflected in the case, turning one small burned glove into many. Outside the hotel, the city breathed cold into the night. Later, the ballroom lights would go dark, and the glove would sit alone in its case until morning. Back at Hawthorne headquarters, the building waited in the quiet of late evening. The lobby lights were dimmer, the turnstiles stood idle, the cameras watched the empty floor with patient lenses. On the 7th floor, a new hire in facilities, a young woman named Keisha, walked her last rounds with a clipboard in hand. She liked the job. It paid better than the last one, and there was something satisfying about checking a place while the world slept. She paused near a stairwell door. A faint rattle came when it closed. She pushed it open and shut it again. The latch caught, but not cleanly. If the building lost power and the magnet locks released, the door might not seal. Smoke, if there ever were any, would have an easier path. She remembered the meeting with Lucas a week earlier, the way he had talked about doors and air, and the way trouble liked to find a path. She took out her phone and snapped a picture of the latch. On her screen, a contact sat near the top. Lucas Grant, safety. She attached the photo and typed, "Stairwell door 7B not catching right. Might be nothing, might be something. Figured you would want to know." She hit send. A floor above, in a quiet office lit by a single lamp, Lucas's phone buzzed on the desk. He picked it up, read the message, and looked at the image. The latch was only slightly misaligned. "Enough." "Good eye," he wrote back. "Block the door open with a wedge for now, so no one gets stuck. I will put in a work order first thing and walk it with you." Keisha read the reply and smiled to herself. She wedged the door, noted it on her sheet, and kept walking. Her footsteps echoed down the stairwell, a soft, steady sound. On the wall above her, an exit sign glowed a clear, even red. Outside, traffic moved across the river. In apartments and houses across the city, lights went out one by one. In a small kitchen, a drawing hung on the wall, with tape at each corner. The paper had curled slightly at the edges. The words at the top were a little smudged from fingers. Some people save your life once. The best ones help you live it better. Underneath, in thick crayon lines, a man in a blue shirt carried a figure out of a fire. Beside him, a boy held his hand. A woman with a cane stood nearby. Above them all, a red glove floated, larger-than-life fingers open ready. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.